Hello.
Hi, everybody.
Good. Oh, I wanted to say good morning, but
It's good afternoon.
it's good afternoon. But that feels weirdly formal.
Mm-hmm.
Hi.
We do have a word for that.
Yeah, we were having a hoods up dance party.
Just to kind of get the blood moving. It's also very cold. It's snowing in Massachusetts.
Yeah. What?
Which seems like it should
What?
be illegal. In fact,
Yeah.
I think it is illegal.
I don't know if it's snowing where you all are,
I
but
kn-
it's wild.
I know I voted for no snow, so I'm not entirely sure how this happened.
But also, I don't know if this is where you all are at, but I don't know, you get to a point, you see snow, it's almost May, and you're like, this might as well happen. You know?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Sure, why not? We didn't have anywhere to go.
Hi, everybody. We already did that.
We did that. Anyway, welcome. I think that we should start out by going over the link that we've put in the description today, what we're going to be supporting, what we'd love you to all consider supporting this week, is the United States Postal Service.
The United States has a postal service?
For now!
You gotta get your leg down, by the way. You're shaking the camera.
Sorry. Yeah, so I'm sure a lot of you have heard about this. Meanwhile, I've been sitting here like, is it USPS or the USPS? Like, can't figure it out.
I mean, if you go with the hooked on phonics way of going through it, it's just...
So, anyway, we thought it would be great to support the post office this week. For those of you who don't know, I'm sure many of you do, the current administration is trying to strip funding from the post office, which we hate. We hate it. We would simply love to keep a post office, partly because, as always, but particularly now, everyone is very heavily using the mail service. I also know there are a lot of areas that, for example, UPS doesn't even deliver to, but USPS will. So that's a pretty big deal. It is also a voter suppression tactic. It could seriously prevent people from voting by mail this year, which we also would hate. We would just hate that. So the idea is that in order to support the USPS, people can buy stamps directly from them, and that's the link that we have put in the description. You can text USPS to 50409. That's 50409.
And that is also in the description.
Yeah, you can just text USPS, which signs a digital petition to restore funding to the USPS. And you can also just repost about this on social media. There's a hashtag #SaveUSPS. So we hope you all participate in that, because we would really love to keep our mail service.
We would.
I would love that for us.
And again, if you want to support us doing this, if these have meant a lot to you, we really want to keep this free. There are lots of things that we can do as like an educational program with it being free, and also we just want to be able to give it to all of you. So if you want to support us, support the post office. Have you ever tried to send a letter through FedEx? Don't. It costs like $30 and takes weeks.
And that could be our only option.
That could be our only option.
Oh, we'd hate it.
Yep.
Also, shout out to Sarah Emily Baum, who compiled this information for me.
Shout out to Sarah for all of her work on the Discord, too, and all of her work on everything.
Yes, she's been a huge part of like the behind-the-scenes work on this project, despite also being a college student and having plenty of stuff going on in her own life. So we really appreciate it. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on, I want to read our submission that we chose from last week's assignment. Could you just recap last week's assignment?
Last week's assignment, we were talking about world building, starting off with little seeds that grow into larger ideas, right? How you can kind of create a coherent world, whether you're writing something that is fantastical or something that's real, so long as what you're creating kind of connects to the other pieces that are being created. And so kind of counterintuitively, it really pays to start small and then ask questions out from there, right?
Yes. So we picked a submission, and this one has a chart like the one that we made in the exercises last week. So we're going to throw that up. This is from Unionize the Rats. Deep cut there.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. That's a reference to the
It
exercise we did.
That took me a while.
Yeah. So I don't know if on your screen you can see what the chart says. I will quickly read it, and then there's also a written portion which I will read out loud, which I found absolutely captivating. So at the top in brown, it says Travis Garden just keeps dying, which is what hooked me right away.
It's a very good hook.
Yeah, and I think probably in some subsequent workshop we will talk about hooks.
Yeah, that's definitely on our way.
So that's something we will cover one day. But this is a great one. So following that down on the left, there's something that's resurrecting him. It wants him to see something. He thinks it's something at the cafe, but it's not. It's something else. Sorry.
That's all right.
Thank you so much for just following me with the camera.
The cameraman follows. Sorry, you were saying?
I was saying he thinks his fiancée is cheating on him. They are, but that's not the point. Quantum Leap meets Groundhog Day.
I missed that box. I like that.
It's a good pitch. All right, I'm having a little bit of a challenge, like reading this out loud in a way that makes sense, because obviously everything connects to a couple of other things.
Right.
So I'm just gonna read some stuff. He's dying somehow. He's dying the same way every time. Walks to bus stop, sees cafe, sees fiancé, waves at them. Fiancé is sitting with someone else. They look shocked to see them there. Walks into street to cross it and meet with fiancé. Fiancé screams his name, hit by bus. And then on the right, he's stuck in a loop. When he figures out why he's being resurrected, he'll be free. He can't stop doing the same thing over and over. His body is out of his control, but he can talk and think. He thinks he figured it out at one point, but he just keeps looping. There are a couple loops where he morosely accepts his fate, then it clicks. He only has a minute before the loop resets. He dies a lot. My boy is straight up not having a good time. He's being resurrected to save someone else. There's someone else in the road. He turns his head once and sees them. He's not the only person the bus hits, just the first. He only has enough time to shout back at them, and they're so surprised that they do, and he doesn't die anymore. So that's all the stuff written in the chart. There's this written portion, which I will also read. Travis Garden was nothing special. Very few of us are. He was not particularly tall or short. He didn't stand out in a crowd, nor was he ordinary enough to be of note. He was just Travis Garden, and that was not someone who stuck out. He liked carrot cake and loved his fiancée, loved, how do you say it, pinochle?
Pinochle.
Loved pinochle and hated rummy. He was simply him, as most of us are, and he was 4 minutes late. Travis Garden did not ride the bus because it scared him. He had ridden the school bus as a child and seen busly horrors he did not want to relive as an adult, and so Travis was not late for the bus on an inconsequential Tuesday morning, even though at that moment several people were. He was late for a dentist appointment, something that spawned mixed emotions in Travis. On the one hand, he was late, and there were fees for this sort of thing. On the other, it was a dentist appointment, and there was still a small part of Travis that conjured visions of strange machines and unspeakable mouth-related horrors when he thought of a dentist appointment. There seemed to be a lot of childhood horrors that shaped Travis Garden. It's strange. The most important things in your life do not take very long to happen. The events that were about to occur to Travis Garden only took 1 minute, 48 seconds. He walked in the sunny Tuesday morning, taking in the sunlight like he had not felt it in days. He stood for a moment at the bus stop on 7th Street, waiting for the cars to pass. He saw in front of him his fiancée at a cafe he had not known was so close to the dentist's office. His fiancée was eating with someone, and Travis waved at them. He was going to eat lunch with his fiancée after his appointment, he thought, at this cafe in the Tuesday sun. He took a step into the road, and his fiancée called his name. The bus hit him like a bus, and it all went black. And Travis Garden stood for a moment at the bus stop on 7th Street, taking in the sunlight like he had not felt its touch in days, waiting for the cars to pass. He was 4 minutes late for his dentist appointment.
I really like that.
I love it.
I really, really like that.
I love it. It's also a really interesting...
You want to scoot back over to...
No, you can leave the camera fully on me. That would be fine.
No, in fact, I think... Hold on. Hi,
one of the things that I really like about it, especially since we've looked at the chart, is like when you... This is not a crazy world.
Mm-hmm.
It's very similar to ours, but it is different from ours.
Mm-hmm.
because he keeps dying and he's stuck in this loop, and that's what makes it a buildable world.
Yes.
And I think that's very smart.
Mm-hmm.
I also just really dig the writing style.
Yeah, I like it too. One of the things I really like about that web to start is that it kind of shows something that we mentioned very briefly. You gotta put your leg down and keep kicking the table.
Sorry!
One of the keys I'm mentioning something that we mentioned very briefly, which is that it shows how by starting with that seed, starting with the world, you can actually get a plot out of it. One of those boxes is just straight up the outline.
Yeah.
And what I love about that is that outline comes very organically out of the assumptions that came before it, right?
Yeah.
So if you're feeling completely stuck, starting with something very small and just asking a lot of questions about it can definitely help you just like stumble upon your story, I think.
Yeah, and like there's no rules, so like even if this started out as just trying to write down one thing at a time in each of these new boxes, and then at some point this person was kind of hit by like, oh, here's this whole thing. I mean, I don't know what was in their head or how they wrote it, but if that's how it happens, that works great.
Right.
And I'm very curious to know where it goes from here. And I hope you keep writing it. Great job.
Yeah, I'd be excited to see it.
Yeah, well done, Unionize the Rats. We love it.
Excellent. And we hope that your cause continues. That the rats are indeed unionized. So we ready to get into it today, I think.
We ready.
Let's start off with something a little spooky, just to scare everybody.
Spooky. Wait, I'll put my hood back up for spooky.
The time has come. Just draft it.
That is spooky.
We've been talking a lot over the last couple of weeks about kinds of best practices when you're writing a story, right? Things that you can do to make it so that it's a story that ticks off certain boxes really well, that audiences will generally enjoy. The big thing that I really want to come to today, though, is that all of that stuff to start is only useful insofar as it gets you to actually start. When you are drafting, you should not be worrying about whether or not your story is any good. That's why we're mixing up our order a little bit this week. So we're starting off with our you're stuck at home, so you might as well do this work. I know. Twist. Write a draft of a short story using the strategies we have discussed so far. This is not due next week. That would be very fast. But it's something that we want you to start over the course of the next week. So yeah, that's it. That's actually our whole stream for today. We did it in 14 minutes. I figure that's a new record. So go write a story. Anyway, bye.
Rude. Oh my god! I can't believe you did that.
That's not it. So the question is how.
That was messed up.
Yeah, that was pretty.
That was dark.
Yep.
I did not know he was going to do that.
Neither did I until I did. The chaos lives inside me. So the question is how, right? Like, I mean, literally, it can be very frustrating when you're trying to draft because you're just sitting there in front of a keyboard and you know that you're mechanically capable of it. Your fingers can move on the keys. You do it all the time when you're just killing time or whatever. So why can't they do it when it's time to actually write it? We're going to take a side road to talk about this. And first, in order to get there, we're going to talk about how to write collaboratively by yourself.
Which is also, we have been asked. I think that was one of the questions in the topic request channel, which is how do we write collaboratively. So this is kind of an answer to that.
Yes.
However, one of the reasons that we didn't want to make it a whole topic unto itself is because not everybody might be writing collaboratively, and that would be kind of a waste of your time. But you can do it by yourself.
You can. One of the things we're planning on doing over the next couple of weeks, actually, is taking a lot of those topic requests that people are throwing up on the Discord, on the topic requests channel, and trying to collect them into kind of group topics that work together. So a couple of things that y'all have been asking for will be in here, right? But first, we're going to talk about how we write collaboratively, and I swear this will be relevant to you solo in a minute, even if you don't want to write collaboratively. Here's our basic simplified process for writing together. I'm the top row. Sophie's at the bottom row. In general, I tried to make this relevant to the time as it's passing, right? So I plan, outline, pitch it, draft it, and then eventually I'm responsible for revising it. I do most of the actual typing on the keyboard parts, right? Sophie, while I'm planning, also plans with me. That is one of the few stages that we are in super doing exactly the same thing together.
Yeah, that's the stage where we will sit down together.
Yes.
and like have a meeting, and it's our planning meeting, and it's what are we going to do with this episode or this season.
Exactly. Then, usually I will go off on my own and outline it, give or take. We're going to come back to that in a sec. After I pitch it, Sophie will give feedback. While I'm drafting,
the pitch is also a meeting.
The pitch is also a meeting.
The pitch is a meeting. It's a pitch meeting where Kevin tells me the story.
Right. We're going to go over these steps in a little more detail in a sec. Sophie tosses some supports and demands at me, and then gives feedback before I go to revise, right? This is basically how we break it up. I'm going to fly through these next couple slides real quick. These are basically just things to think about as part of the drafting process. In the planning, things that we ask are like, what things do we really want to happen in the story? How can we create a conflict that ensures those things will happen, right? Again, if you go back a couple of times ago, maybe like our second workshop, I think, we talked about how you want to create a kind of loose outline, but one of the best things that you can do is set up the situation so that it is perfect for your characters. Use that to your advantage. During the planning time, we try to figure out what big things need to happen. How can we stack the deck, set up the situation so that they must happen, right? We go to outlining. This is where I ask questions like, how does the story move from moment to moment? Is there always tension? Is there always something at stake? Am I keeping the story moving and exciting? The pitch meeting, I think, is extremely important, even if you're writing solo. Just tell the story out loud. Forcing yourself to go through the story to someone else moment by moment will let you notice potential problems ahead of time. I always know that I'm in trouble if when I'm telling Sophie the story and they ask me a question, my response to the question is, I don't know, I'll figure it out later. There are certain things I'm allowed to do that with. In general, we've kind of fallen on, at this point, I have a pretty good instinct for like action scenes, so I can do that. If it's a major, like, what was this character's motivation, and I'll say, I'll figure that out later, that's a no-go.
Right, it sort of needs to structurally hang together and make sense
Exactly.
at this point.
Right, so this is sort of how you determine that it makes sense. Drafting is, you just write the dang thing. And revising is, you write the dang thing, but this time you make it good. That distinction's really important, and we're going to get back to that in a sec. But remember that these are two different tasks. Writing the story and writing a good story are two completely different things that actually have very little to do with one another. And you've got to be able to keep them separate if you want to be able to write a good story eventually, right? Let's go look back at that simplified writing process for writing together. It is a little simplified. There are things, I'd say that this more describes where Sophie and I were at the beginning of our show, and we've kind of grown towards each other as time has gone by. I've become a little bit more independent. Sophie supplies lines more often, I would say. But here's why it's useful to you, I think. If we take that super broad view and just apply it to you, this is how you write together by yourself. You need to have a writer brain, and you need to have an editor brain. And you need to know when it's which brain's turn, right? This is really important because if we look at the brains, these are actual photographs of the brains. If we look at the brains, writer brain says yes, never worries about repercussions, and it gets things done, and those things are often bad. That's just how it works. The editor brain always says, are you sure? It always thinks long term, and it's extremely easily paralyzed, right? I think that Sophie's an extremely good storyteller, otherwise I would not be doing this with them. And also, you've said, I think many times, that when you try to write, one of the biggest things that gets in the way is that you just feel so stuck.
Yeah, I would characterize myself as naturally, instinctively more of an editor.
Yeah.
And so my problem when I do just try to sit down and write is that I'm so frustrated that it's not good.
Yeah.
You know?
And I would say that kind of before we teamed up, I think that, again, we've both grown towards each other a little bit, so taking the extreme. Before we teamed up, my problem was that any idea would go. I would say yes to absolutely everything because I just wanted to get words down.
Right.
Which I would find out 600 pages later made a story that made absolutely no sense.
Right. You are naturally very prolific. Like, you've always just been able to write a lot, but it didn't always, like, hang together.
Right.
Necessarily.
Right. Because I have a tendency to say things like, I'll figure it out later. Right. When you're drafting, it's time to throw editor brain in the trash.
This whole workshop is just throw me out.
Right. This whole workshop is just, Sophie, it's not your turn anymore. Hi, everyone. So we want to throw editor brain in the trash. This is really, really hard to do, but you need to find ways to make editor brain shut up for a while.
But I'm so cute.
one of the best things, the most important things that you can do is when it talks to you, just pretend it's not there, and eventually it will go away. And if it makes
It
faces
won't.
at you, just continue doing what you're doing, and you should be completely fine. Silence, editor brain. Silence.
Okay, I'll butt out.
Here's some tips for drafting, because again, easier said than done, right? Mechanically, we are capable of tapping the keys. We know this. But how do we actually get the critical editor brain, which we are going to need to call on later, right? It's not useless. It's just annoying. How can we make it go away for a little bit while we're just trying to get the story down, right? Here are some tips. First, you have to let the first draft be bad. This is a scene from My Nightmares. I tried to get an animated GIF in here, but I couldn't do it because I'm almost 30, and that's old. And so, but like when you got the blank document, you've got the blinking cursor, it is so excruciatingly painful to move on from there. This is the scene from your nightmare. The important thing is just to end the blankness. Fill it with something. I have a running deal with myself that I've had for probably close to 10 years now, that the first sentence I write of a project will never make it into the final draft. That means that I can just start. It doesn't matter. It's zero stakes. My first sentence isn't going to be in the final draft, so it does not matter.
I think that's also why, for some people, NaNoWriMo, for those who have participated in it, can be really useful to get started, because it's like all you're trying to hit is a word count.
Exactly.
And one of the nice things I think about that project is that they very much put the focus on the word count and not on the quality, because as Kevin is saying, it's so important to just put anything down.
Definitely.
You can work with it once you have it down.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what it is.
Nobody's first draft is good. Nobody, not your favorite writers, not Shakespeare, not nobody. It's easier to go back and fix it than it is to get it right the first time, as Sophie's saying, right? If you are trying to both tell the story and figure out how to make it good in your head at the same time, you are trying to do two completely different tasks simultaneously, and that's going to drive you nuts.
And I think that, like, this is where English classes, I'm sure not your English class, but English classes a lot of times have, like, done...
Hold on, I gotta clutch my pearls.
have, like, done a number on people, because all we ever see is people's final drafts, and then we talk about, like, so why were these authors so brilliant?
Right.
And, like, you don't get to see how bad it was when they first put words on a page.
Absolutely.
And I think that's kind of damaging to people who would like to be writers.
Definitely. There's something that I will, if I'm going to try to remember to post on the Discord, a really interesting article about Cormac McCarthy's writing. If you haven't read anything by Cormac McCarthy, he's very, very famous for his super sparse style. He's like, when you read a sentence by Cormac McCarthy, you know it's by him. There's an article that shows some of his very first drafts of one of his most famous novels, and it sounds like someone doing a god-awful Cormac McCarthy impression. It sounds so bad. So even this like master of style isn't himself. He is not this master of style, right? It is a thing that he achieves after writing the story and then revising it and changing it. Even the master's first drafts are terrible, and that's just how it goes, right? Tip 2, keep momentum. If you're waiting for the muse to strike, you will be waiting forever. You need to write now. Right now. The muse does not exist, and if you're waiting for it, it will exist even less. I find that my moments of inspiration only happen when I'm actually sitting down and writing. The first like couple hundred words that I write in a day, because I take a real extreme in this approach where I draft a lot of stuff that I end up cutting. My first couple hundred words in a day are excruciating. They're like pulling teeth. They feel terrible. And eventually I kind of pick up speed and it feels a little bit better, right? If I were just sitting there waiting for it to feel good, I would never write anything, because I've got to get through those first couple hundred extremely painful words in order to get there.
It's exactly the same thing as dancing. Like, it's funny because that's exactly what, like, a dance class is like.
Yeah?
Yeah, the first, like, few exercises you do feel absolutely terrible, because, like, you're not in it yet. Like, your body and your mind aren't there yet, and then it starts to feel better as you go.
Yeah.
And, like, I think, again, I just think that, like, it's really easy to look at, I think writing in particular, and maybe creative stuff generally, but I think particularly writing, like, people think it's this thing where you just, like, have a flash of something and then you just do it and it's great. And, like, it is much more akin to anything, any kind of skill that you have to just, like, practice a lot and do it every day. And, like, a lot of the time it kind of sucks.
Right. a really great writer can make you feel like when you're reading what they say, they can make you feel like it is all obvious, right? It all just came right off the
But that's
dome.
the illusion.
Exactly. That is the illusion, and like any good illusion, it takes a ton of work to actually accomplish. One of those things where you know you're doing a good job if people don't notice that you're doing the job at all, right? Here's some tips for keeping momentum. Write out of order. Jump to scenes that you know well. I have done this more and more as I've gone along. It has created a situation where I never know how close to done I am with a script, because all I know is there are a bunch of holes, and then suddenly I'm writing a scene and I'm scrolling through looking for a hole, and I'm like, oh, that was the last one, I guess I'm done. I did that literally this morning. But it keeps you moving, right? It keeps you feeling like you're accomplishing something. Throw in placeholder lines you don't like. If you know generally what you want it to say, you can throw in a placeholder line, you can write in a bracket. One of the bonuses to a placeholder line.
Sometimes they're amazing.
For real. Like a couple of, I think, the best lines on our show I threw in because I couldn't think of anything and I was sick of it.
The last line of season 1.
The very last sentence of season 1.
Was a placeholder, and you were like, oh, sorry, I'll come up with something better. And I was like, what? This is the best thing you've ever written.
I actually apologized to Sophie about that sentence while tears were streaming down their face.
Yeah, and I was, and like, I don't know, as editor brain, I got to be like, no, this is actually amazing.
Yes.
And because you had turned off that part of your brain, you were free to just, like, write it even though you thought it was bad.
Mm-hmm.
And that one was a freebie. It turned out to be amazing.
Absolutely. There are tons of lines like that. There are too many to remember, but that's the one that really, really jumps out at me. And the important thing is, to the best of your ability, don't slow down. Just keep moving. Even if what you're writing is terrible, promise yourself you'll cut it out later. It does not matter. What's important is that you just get it down for now, right? Tip 3, don't look back. There's a reason that you've never read a novel by Orpheus. Do you like it? It's a bit. If you all don't know, hold on, let me help you out here. If you don't know, there's a myth about this guy named Orpheus, and the bit's dead, so I'm gonna go. If you realize something doesn't work and it needs to change, make a note of it, continue the draft as though you already changed it, and go back and fix it later. Do not keep stopping writing the draft to go back and fix old scenes. Because what might end up happening is you go a little further, you realize there's another problem, you end up needing to go back and rewrite the same scene, you go a little further, there's another problem, you end up needing to rewrite the same scene.
That means I snuck up on you.
Yes, exactly. Which is terrifying. I'll say, as somebody who lives in the same domicile as this creature, when it sneaks up on you
with these eyes,
with its gigantic, terrible eyes, you've no choice but to forsake your sanity to the pits of madness. So if you'd rather keep yours, just make a note of it, fix it later. We have my first drafts are unreadable. Usually even you get the second draft. Because, like, in my first draft, a character's name will change halfway through, and I just won't say anything about it. Mm-hmm. In the first draft of season 3, the spaceship's name was, like, a series of underscores for a long time.
While I was trying to think of something. We didn't have one yet.
Yeah. Wasn't until the script was done, actually, that I ended up slotting all those in.
Yeah.
Right? So whatever you gotta do, keep moving, don't look back. But what if you get stuck? Sophie, what if they get stuck?
I thought you were going to read it, like, in a voice.
Well, what if I get stuck?
Thank you.
Oh. You will. You will get stuck. It's cool. Everybody gets stuck. I get stuck. I got stuck this morning, and then I pushed through it, and, like, I finished my writing, and I felt okay about it. Sometimes it's the best you can do. Here are some checks that you can do that might help you out when you get stuck, okay? First off, this is answering some of the questions that people were asking us on the Discord too. You got to ask yourself, am I focusing on the story? Forget all the big terms from English class for now. Don't think about theme. Don't think about symbolism. Don't think about what it all means. Those belong to editor brain. Those are not writer brains.
They're mine.
Right. When you draft, you have only one responsibility, and that's to tell the story. You are just telling a story. A theme can often feel really forced if you're trying to draft with a theme in mind, and then everything is basically just evidence for this argument that you have, and it's just, you've totally set it up so that you're absolutely right, and everybody can see that it comes across pretty well.
Everything is just in service to that. That's how you turn into Ayn Rand.
Yes, that is how you turn into Ayn Rand. So really, I think that a lot of writers have said this, but one of the best things that you can do for yourself is just tell the story, then look back at what you've done and ask yourself, what dots can I connect here, right? What themes are present in the thing that I made, and then how do I highlight them? We're not going to talk about that today. That's for editor brain later on. Today we're talking about writer brain. So you got to ask yourself, in order to make sure that you're focusing on the story in any given scene, if you're feeling stuck, ask yourself, what's at stake right now? What could be gained or lost? If there isn't anything, you got to bring something to the fore. What's causing tension in this scene? Highlight it, right? Is there some kind of threat? Is there some kind of looming argument? Is there some background the audience is aware of that nobody else is? And what could go wrong that could make this more interesting? Even small conflicts create interest. One of my favorite anecdotes about this is if you ever read the novel by Stephen King, The Stand, that novel breaks a lot of rules of how you're supposed to write a big novel. It has way too many characters, and in the end, it's pretty satisfying. But one of the things that Stephen King has said about the writing of that novel is that he hit a point in the plot where he was completely stuck because he did not know what to do with all the characters. And I'm about to spoil The Stand for you. I'm sorry. It's like a 40-year-old book. He basically solves the problem by blowing half the characters up, which sounds so cheap, but it works so well because that ends up narrowing the focus, and it creates an event that makes it so the characters have to get into motion. Things have to happen, right? There's no more kicking around and waiting. You also got to ask yourself, are you too close to this? Our own emotions regarding the act of writing can get in the way of seeing our writing clearly. The feeling this story is bad usually just means writing this was unpleasant. I was feeling this about the thing that I was writing this morning.
And also for the past several days.
And also for the past several days. Tell me about that story?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And then every time I read it, I'd be like, no, this is actually great.
So Sophie's demonstrating exactly what I think the solution to this is, which is you got to show your writing to someone else. I was so in my head about that one that all I could see were the things about it that I didn't like. If you show it to somebody else, they can give you a look at what's actually going on. They can either reassure you that it's better than you think it is, or they can give you a sense of what the problems really are. You are still going to be mad at this story, and you're still not going to want to
Stupid cat!
If you look up angry and happy on Wiki Commons, which is where I get all my images because they're public domain, this is what you get. So here we go.
Oh,
love them.
Bless.
If you're too close to it, you need another set of eyes on it to either tell you it's actually fine, chill out, just write the stupid thing. I know you hate it, deal. Or, yeah, there's a problem here. Here's the actual problem. It's not that you're a golem made of garbage, right? There's an actual thing that you can think about instead, right? This one I want to highlight. Is this a healthy choice for me right now? Why are you laughing at me?
It's funny!
You need to learn this lesson. I did not learn this lesson when I probably should have. Just because you shouldn't wait for the muse doesn't mean you should run yourself into the ground every day. Try to create a writing habit and stick to it, but listen to your body even if you don't like what it's telling you. I've said this before, even on the show, but a couple years ago, I basically worked myself into a nervous breakdown on this show. And you can look at it from the view of, I was unhappy and I didn't want to live that life. But you can also look at it from the view that, to be honest, during that era, my scripts weren't great. They were some of the ones that I'm least proud of, to be completely honest. So you're not doing anybody any favors by running yourself into the ground. You have to give the hard work an honest try. If it doesn't work, find something less intense to write. Remember, writing is supposed to be fun. You showed up to do this because you like it. And especially when you're in a position like I think we are, where there's an expectation for us to generate stories, you can get lost in the weeds on that.
I think that this can depend a little bit on circumstance, yes.
Yeah.
Because I think some people just are this hard on themselves from the jump, but I think that for you and for us, it was because by that point we were in a situation of constant deadlines.
Yes.
And a certain amount of work had to be churned out in order to meet those deadlines all the time. And a lot of people are in that kind of situation, either if you're publishing your work and you have deadlines, or if you're in school or something and you have to write to deadlines. And I think this is where this piece of advice is particularly useful. I think that if you're not writing for anybody in particular, if you don't have any deadlines, you probably will want to focus more on like establishing that habit, and
Yeah.
you're less likely to run yourself into the ground. But if you happen to be in a situation where you feel like you have these looming deadlines, this is where you may want to check in with yourself about if you're going too hard on yourself.
That's a really important distinction, because I think since I was like 19, so for like a little over 10 years now, I've made it my goal to write for like an hour or 1,000 words every day. And it's been on and off. I've not been 100% consistent with it as things have gotten tough. But that was always fine for me. That was always like a good outlet. When we started doing the show and suddenly I needed to achieve certain benchmarks by certain times, not allowing myself to say, I can't do this right now, or I need a little bit more time, was really, really damaging for me, honestly. Yeah. Listen to yourself. Do not burn yourself out. It is very difficult to find the line to walk between how do I make sure that I'm not just being lazy, and how do I make sure that I'm not just, running myself into the ground.
And there's no
concrete line. If you find it, tell my therapist. She's been helping me look for it for years now. But it's a line you have to aspire to.
Yeah.
I think, even if you're going to mess it up. Okay? That one's for you, not for the draft. But I just said, we need to remember that we like this. We like telling stories, right? So for today's exercise, we're a little bit earlier than we usually are on it, which is great. I just want to have some fun writing some garbage.
Garbage!
We are going to write a couple of very fast, really bad stories together.
Garbage!
Garbage.
Garbage!
And just to remind ourselves that when you just let the ideas fly around, when you try to write stories like a little kid writes stories, which is the words "and then" are your favorite 2 words in the entire world.
Oh, that's true.
Right.
That's cute.
When you try to write stories like that, it's a game. And you've got to remember that even though later on we are going to assert editor brain on top of it, even though later on we are going to try to figure out how to craft it into something better, for now, we're playing.
So should everyone get into the live channel on the Discord? Okay. So make sure you are in the Discord, in the live channel, if you're not there already. Garbage.
Garbage. Garbage.
Garbage.
Here we go. All right. So what we're basically going to do is I'm going to ask you all to submit a sentence at a time. Good, it's not highlighted. I'm going to ask you to submit a sentence at a time. Sophie and I will periodically give you prompts for those seconds just to keep the story moving. These are going to be incredibly short stories. We're talking a paragraph, and we're going to try to go through a couple of them. Okay? So, first off, something happens that immediately sets the stakes. I want literally any sentence that you have, one sentence in the Discord on the live channel that immediately sets the stakes.
Garbage.
What could be gained or lost?
All right, I'm going to wait a little bit to give a few people a chance to get in there. How about that one?
All right, you want to read it?
Clars says, the moon explodes.
The moon explodes. That's our first sentence. This is also determined that our story is in the present tense. Sophie, what do you want out of the second sentence?
I want to know who that affects.
Who's affected by the moon exploding?
Yeah.
Bad answers only.
Oh, but it does need to be a sentence, right?
Yeah, we need a full sentence.
It needs to be a sentence for this.
I already did my writing for today. I'm just copy-pasting what you all say.
A dolphin. Okay, Nureyev is my hero. Says a dolphin is really pissed he can't ride the waves anymore.
All right, my turn to make a demand. When we talked about story structure, like our very, very first one of the things we talked about was a problem presents itself, some kind of plan happens. So my question is, what does the dolphin do? What does the dolphin do? Because he's pissed that he can't ride the waves anymore.
Furious. What does the dolphin do? What does the dolphin do?
The dolphin tells Sophie to mute their computer.
Sorry. I'm very popular. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay.
People feeling
Wow.
inspired by
Okay.
this dolphin.
Wow. Okay. Um, Olive says he eats all the humans as a punishment. I did turn my volume off. Why is this happening to me?
Dolphin's really pissed he can't ride the waves anymore. He eats all the humans as a punishment. Sophie, what do you want out of the next sentence?
I want to know, what happens to his tummy?
What happens to the dolphin's tummy?
I'm worried.
Literally all the humans. Regular sized dolphin? I guess they'll decide.
We don't know. Okay, wait, this will take us in another direction. Where did it go? I lost it, but I know what it said. It was
Tell me what it said.
he becomes like a portal to another dimension. Who said that? I'm sorry. I liked it, but now so many people are submitting that I lost it.
Grab any sentence.
Okay. Oh, no, I found it. M said, the dolphin's tummy is a portal to another dimension.
All right, we are like 1, 2, 3, 4 sentences in. What do you say? What do you say we end this story?
Okay.
All right, let's end it. Dolphin's tummy is a portal to another dimension. Give me a concluding thought. Any concluding thought? Try to wrap it all together if you can. Good luck.
I'll be very impressed.
Oh, I like that.
Kieran says, now the humans have a moon and the dolphin doesn't.
Boom. And part of the reason that I like doing exercises like this is that this story's not actually garbage. It hangs together pretty well. It's weird and surreal, and definitely if you wanted to get an audience on board with it, you need to spend a lot more time
Fleshing it out. But sure.
But yeah, I'm in. This like
stories have been weirder.
Cosmic dolphin revenge story.
Yeah, why the heck not?
All right. Let's start off. Sophie, do you want to put in a prompt for the next first sentence, or do you want to tell the next first sentence?
Like any kind of prompt?
Any prompt.
Okay. Let's do. Ugh, I don't know. Where? Oh my god, I'm like still so stuck in this story. Like all I can think about is the dolphin. Help.
Got nothing?
Nothing.
All right. Let's go. All right, if you're stuck in the dolphin, let's go to another corner of the sea.
Okay.
Same universe.
Okay.
Another corner of the sea.
Okay.
Tell me what's happening over there.
But it's still a prompt?
Yeah, it's a prompt.
Okay. What's happening with the mermaids?
What's happening with the mermaids,
What's
y'all?
happening?
I'm a little offended that nobody's asked yet.
Well, actually, I think people have.
Okay. I'm a little offended that I hadn't asked yet.
Me too.
Several people are typing.
Several. Okay, Min-Max Munchkin says mermaids are starting a biker gang. I love that.
Heck yeah, they are. Here's what I want to know: how do mermaids ride bikes? How a mermaid ride a bike?
How indeed.
Give me a full sentence. How a mermaid ride a bike?
Okay, this is a great answer, but it's not a full sentence. Ooh! Whoa, sorry. Love that. Cactus Bee said the mermaids ride mechanical seahorses.
All right. Do you have a question about the mechanical seahorses, Sophie?
I want to know about the mechanical seahorse industry.
Tell us about Big Mechanical Seahorse. The industry, not
just the big one.
Not the big one. But maybe tell us about the big one. I kind of want to know about the big one.
Okay. Oh, wait, this is the same person we've gotten a submission from before. Sorry. Oh my gosh. Okay, so Ace says it keeps the mechanical seahorse industry keeps mermaids captive in their factories, and the mermaids have to take the industry down.
Keeps mermaids captive.
In their factories, I think. In their factories, and the mermaids have to take the industry down.
They're using the tools of the oppressor to take down the
oppressor. I was gonna say that!
Heck yes. Okay, so they have to take the industry down. I want you to tell me about the mermaid or mermaids that are leading this cause. Give me a sentence. Tell me about the mermaid or mermaids that are leading this cause against Big Seahorse. You know what I read about seahorses the other day?
What?
They don't have stomachs. They literally need to constantly be eating.
That's me.
What's it like to meet yourself on the road, Sophie?
I'm like, hi.
All right, let's see.
Yeah, well, obviously they're girlfriends. Okay, we're getting a lot in the same vein here, which doesn't surprise me, but HG the lesbian says the mermaid leading this cause is named Katya, and she is a lesbian. I mean, to give credit, several people have said lesbians. And you know what? They're right.
Mm-hmm. We're going to practice something else that we talked about today, which is we're just going to jump ahead to another scene. So this has all been set up, right? We're going into more detail than we were with the dolphin.
It was with an E. K-A-T-E-A.
K-A-T-E-A. Oh, okay. Like that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We're going to practice something that we just talked about, which is jumping ahead of scene, right? This is all set up. This is great. But as the writer, I'm curious about what's going to happen when they actually show up to the warehouse. So next sentence, we are in the warehouse. The shakedown is happening. Go. Give me one sentence to hook us in the warehouse. Shakedown's happening. Or in the factory, I should say.
Oh.
You want to read that?
Yeah. Al, the NB nerd, says the factory is on fire and Katya is punching her boss.
Katya is punching her boss. What questions do you have? I figure we can do a couple more sentences of this.
I want to know why it's on fire.
Why is it on fire? Why is it on fire, and why wasn't Sophie invited?
Why? You don't...
Don't answer this.
You don't answer that.
We're looking for a full sentence. Actually, this is fiction, so it does not have to be a full sentence, but it does have to be a complete thought. People are pointing out that they set a fire underwater, and that's real something. I didn't even think about that.
Me neither. I like that I didn't ask that.
Just how they do it.
Oh my gosh. Davis says her wife set the place on fire, sacrificing herself in the process. Sad.
That is sad. I think for our last line, I want a line of dialogue from Katya.
Ooh.
What does Katya say during the big showdown with the boss?
I really like this one.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. Dialogue, dialogue.
Dialogue, what does Katya say? In the greatest revenge story ever told. Got a couple coming in. We'll wait for a couple more.
Just loving this. Can we do that one?
Sure.
That's very funny. Bucky says, looks like you'll be sleeping with the fishes. There are a lot of really good ones, though.
Katya says, I just missed it. Verb tense, there we go.
That was one I really liked, but, like, there's a lot of really good ones.
Yes. So definitely go check out the live channel when you're done. In general, we could have pulled any of these sentences, I think, for any of these.
Yeah.
Is this an exercise or a game? It's really a game. But the thing that I think is really useful about these is, especially if you're working with a small group like we're recommending for this, if any of you get to the point where you're forgetting that this is fun, where you're forgetting that you enjoy telling stories, play a dumb game like this. Because it turns out just making stuff up is really fun. And you can just have some fun with it. And sometimes you need a reminder that you really enjoyed doing it when the work of it kind of is fully in your face. So this is really silly, but there's a lot of value in that silliness, I think, especially if you lose the kind of you lose perspective on your writing. I think I think there's probably 2 stories is enough.
Sorry, I just lost my mind looking at this submission.
Yeah.
Yeah, from Faintly Macabre. You've built your industry on our bodies. We'll build the revolution on yours.
Oh boy. Wonderful.
I'm sent.
Yep. 2 very different Katyas too. I like that.
Yes.
Where's my mouse? All right. So we had some fun writing garbage. Let's return back to what we started with, which is you're stuck at home. Might as well do this work. Write a draft of a short story using the strategies we've discussed so far. Intimidating. Impossible, I might even say. It can't be done. And so we got to break it down. Here's my recommended process. Write a loose outline and then tell the story to your group. Begin drafting, share difficult sections with your group if you get stuck, and throw Sophie in the garbage.
Okay, what's really funny about this is that when we made these slides, that part that says throw Sophie in the garbage was something I came in and added later.
Yes. If you recall, we talked about how the process of drafting is, the writer brain drafts while the editor brain makes demands. This was one of the editor brain's demands. No joke. We'll talk about that more when we get to revision at some workshop in the future. But for now, again, remember, writing the story and writing a good story are 2 different tasks, and you have to do the first one first if you want to get to the second one. Okay? For next week, we want you to submit sections of your draft that demonstrate anything we've learned so far. Next week, we're going to do kind of a grab bag of a bunch of smaller prompts that people have been asking for. A bunch of other and other ways to help you out if you get stuck. So really at this point, the kind of hope is that you're focusing on writing something for yourself, writing something that's fun, and don't worry about being good. Worrying about it being good is the best way to ensure that it never exists and then it's not good, right? Let's do some questions.
Can you say it like David S. Pumpkins?
Oh, like any question?
Yeah.
Any questions? While you all are coming up with questions, again, those go in the live channel on our Discord. If you focus them around what drafting, sort of what to do if you get stuck, those are the most likely ways to get an answer from us today. But we'll collect some of them for next time too. I imagine our Q&A section for next time will probably be a bit longer than usual, since we're hoping that one's much more structured around, okay, now you're in the trenches, you're actually writing the thing. What do you do, right? If you're stuck, what do you do? Do we have...
That's interesting. Okay, so tips for writer's block from the other Sophie, that is something we will say more about not this week, but we will get to that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that next week. For now, for now, just keep writing. Even if you have writer's block, just tell yourself this sentence is garbage and then write it down. You'll write slower and you won't like anything that you write, but it'll be way easier to do something with it afterwards. So remember that you are capable of hitting the keys. Hit them, make something bad. It's better than making nothing. I can promise you that.
Well, this is a question, I guess, for just you, which from Gold Rogue today, which is, what's your favorite part about drafting? What kind of things do you do while you're drafting? Where do you write? Do you listen to music?
So I guess my favorite thing about drafting is being really surprised by the story as it happens. Part of the reason I really like doing really loose outlines is because, honestly, a lot of my favorite moments in a lot of these stories happened just because while I was writing the scene, I realized, like, oh, all the pieces lined up. Let's just do this and see if editor brain yells at me later. And if they don't, then we're golden, right? In general, I enjoy drafting the most when I'm remembering that I'm having fun with it and I'm just like playing around with the characters and seeing what fun things they can do. In terms of where do I write? What do I listen to? I actually have a weird habit where I need to mix it up, because if I lately I've been writing on my bed, for example, because usually I would write at the library, but we can't do that right now. But like, if a day comes when I'm supposed to be writing on my bed and instead I end up like killing time, my bed is poisoned. I need to go somewhere else because then I associate my bed with killing time. I need to go write while standing up in the kitchen, or I need to write in the living room. So I move around a lot, which is not something I've ever heard anybody else say. So you don't necessarily have to do it.
I know what you mean, though, even with like sound design stuff. Like sometimes I feel like one spot that I've been working in has become a rut, or is like psychologically upsetting to me for some reason, and I need to take it somewhere else. I get that. Ray Not Today Logic says, how do you know if... It's just Ray Not Today. Whatever. How do you know if your idea has the potential to become a story? It does.
It does.
It just does. Any idea does.
Exactly. And I think that the way that kind of culturally we talk about stories, we put such a huge premium on the premise. Like, the premise is everything. But just think about how many movies you've seen that had an amazing premise and then they turned out to be garbage.
And how many things that when you think about it, you're like, oh my god, on paper this sounds ridiculous.
Right.
But they're just good. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all.
The premise is actually not worth very much. What's important is that it's a story that is exciting moment to moment, that's interesting moment to moment, right? Any idea, as long as it's got a conflict.
I mean, I think even if you didn't have one yet, you could still.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
What is Holly Not Holly says, what is a good way to skip a solution you don't have yet without messing up and splitting the story in a way you won't be able to amend without major alterations? I mean, you might have to do major alterations.
You might just have to do major alterations.
I don't know that there's a good answer to that.
Unfortunately, a lot of the drafting process, which has gotten harder for me over time, actually, because I have more experience with it, is making yourself forget the bad things that happened last time when you were drafting. Because if I increasingly find myself kind of frozen by fear that I'm going to end up needing to rewrite everything I'm writing right now. But I can also tell you that on days that I feel like that, I don't write anything, so no progress is made. I need to kind of forget that that's even an option for a while. And then later on, I'll probably need to rewrite it. Yeah. A lot of our episodes come out to like 7,000-ish words of script. For some of our episodes, I've written 50 to 60,000 words that like all ended up getting cut just to make it work. And like
Moonlit Hermit is definitely one of the most infamous.
Moonlit Hermit,
ones for that.
Angela Brahma. So not only just random episodes, but like
some of the best ones.
Episodes people really like.
Yeah.
So how do you avoid rewriting intensively? You don't.
Yeah.
You just get ready to do it, unfortunately.
This is a question about the assignment, I think. Is this a completely new from Davis? Is this a completely new story, or can this be using characters we have but haven't written an outline/draft for? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
It can be anything, I think, at this point. It's like, just if you don't already have something that you are working on, have something you are working on.
Exactly.
So you can totally have something based on an assignment from before.
The kind
or
of
anything.
the mental map we have for the next couple of weeks, it'll just be a lot easier for us to point to what you are currently working on for the skills that we're doing, because you can't really teach revision out of nowhere. You need to have something to base it on. So if we're going to talk about revision in the future, we need to talk about drafting now.
So we've gotten several of the same questions, both just now and also previously, which I can't remember. We might have decided we're going to address at a later date, which is how do you know when you're done? But also we just got kind of the flip side of that from HG the Lesbian, which says, is there ever a point when you should give up on a story?
It's a hard question.
That is a hard question. Because I don't know, like I want to say never, unless there is no joy to be had from it for you anymore.
There's a little there's also something to be said about what your definition of giving up is. Remember that, you know, if you bump into a significant problem in a story that makes it so that it's not fun to write anymore, it is just not going the way you wanted it to, it has veered in a direction that you don't feel comfortable or capable of writing, that doesn't mean that time was wasted. Our major villain of our second season, I just realized that saying his name would be a spoiler, so I'm not going to do it, for the first half of the season. Our major villain of our second season started off a bit character in a short story that I wrote that I hated, and then I reused him for a novel that I wrote that I hated, and then we just took him wholesale.
But he was like my favorite thing that novel.
He was the only good part of that novel.
Yeah.
So was that novel a failure? Like, you can't read it. I refuse. But I didn't really give up on it because I was.
And we've cannibalized it a lot.
We have. At this point, you couldn't read it because all of the twists in it have been done somewhere else.
Anyway, so did we? Are we going to cover at a later date the question of like how do you know when you're done?
Yeah, I think that's more of an editor brain question.
Yeah.
For as far as the writer brain's concerned, you're done when the conflict is addressed. For a short story, you want to make the scope fairly small, right? You can't save the universe in 20 pages, but you could probably talk about one tough day, even if it's one tough day in a terrible world.
You could save the universe in 20 pages. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Is Asimov a joke to you?
There are so many rules Asimov breaks by doing that are really, really interesting, but I don't think are super useful at the stage that we're at right now.
But I just feel really good about having said that.
So, editor brain is going to show up. It's going to make your life a lot harder.
Casey asks, do you find any differences between drafting scripts versus drafting other types of writing? That's an interesting question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like what?
Drafting scripts is faster. Part of the reason that it's faster is because everything comes through dialogue. Writing exposition, description, and things like that need to happen in like prose takes a very long time.
That's a good point.
So one of the things that I have to get used to when I flip between the two is remembering that a scene that feels slow in not drama, a scene that feels slow just in like novel or short story style fiction, might not actually be slow. It might just be that I'm used to the very fast banter of people only talking all the time.
I like this question from Rowan. How do you deal with the anxieties that come with sharing your drafts in order to get constructive criticism?
That's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
In my experience, you end up being very careful about who you actually show it to, and try to work on recognizing the difference between feedback that is useful and feedback that just hurts. So one of the reasons that Sophie has always been such an amazing co-writer for me is because they're always going to be honest. Always, always, always.
I'm like really mean.
Yes. But the thing is that because they're always going to be honest, if they say they like something, I know they really like it. You know, I know that I can trust that assessment. if they get really mean and I'm not in a place for it, I'm also comfortable enough with you that I can tell you that you need to tone it down.
Yes, that's true.
So uh, finding the right person to share it with is really important. Also, if it's some kind of mutual sharing situation where everybody feels awkward and vulnerable, that helps. But you're always going to feel vulnerable when you share it. And a lot of it is just accepting that and doing it anyway. Writing a bad sentence never killed anybody.
Oh, I love this question, and it is not suited to what we're talking about today, but I'm going to say it and then put a pin in it because it's a great question from Lorad. Is there any way to avoid writing a story whose themes / implications could turn into something you don't like / believe? Or do you just have to wait and see and scrap it if it does?
This is a good question.
Not for today, but I'm going to copy and paste that because I really want to address that at some point.
That's a really good editor brain question.
Yeah, it's not for today, but it's a great question. Okay. Holly Not Holly wants to know, do you use the original draft as only an idea, or do you rewrite over it after you edit / make notes?
As only an idea. I'm not sure I understand what that means.
I assumed the question was pretty much just about, like, what do you physically do as you draft? And I know the answer for you is you save everything.
Yes, save everything, save multiple copies of everything. I can't count the number of times that we decided to delete a scene or a conversation and then, like, 2 drafts later, realize we needed that conversation. If you do not save it, you're gonna have to redo it, and rewriting a scene that you already know what happens in it is excruciating. It's really, 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 really boring. So even I would say I pretty much always take the old thing and write on top of it, pull it apart, move it around, things like that.
Gold Rogue wants to know, how do you get into writing when you really want to, but just can't seem to get into it until you need to stop writing?
Can't seem to get into it until you need to stop. Like when your time's up for the day, do we think?
I think, yeah.
That's something that you can work on by just trying to be consistent about trying, right? My guess is that if you're only getting into it when the time is ending, is that could be one of a couple things. It could be that a deadline really, really pushes you, right? Like, oh, I only have 5 minutes left. I better actually get moving, right? And then you get moving. In which case, asserting more deadlines on yourself could be extremely helpful for you. Another thing that might be happening there is that, it just takes you a while to warm up, and what you're discovering is that you need a longer runway in order to really get into it. Try to find ways to claim that time, right? When you're writing, you can treat it like, I'm at work, my door is closed, nobody comes in. So this is a very broad way of saying, as you experiment and as you keep on trying to write each day, you will figure out what works for you. And once you figure out what works for you, hold on to it and don't let it go.
This is just follow-up. Mo says, do you save the draft in a different file to look back on it someday, or do you, fix it? No, you have every draft.
Yeah.
He keeps all of them.
Yeah, the folder for like Angel of Brahma, for example, it's all just script files, but it's probably 25 files in there, just from slightly different versions.
Yeah.
Save everything. Save absolutely everything. You will never regret having done it.
Yeah. And it's very interesting to look back at too.
Oh, totally.
To see. Cecil Blue Jorts wants to know, any tips on avoiding getting distracted by other things while trying to write?
If you live alone, or if you're alone in the house, literally go find your router or your Wi-Fi thing. I know the word, but I can't remember it right now. I'm a little burnt out. Modem. Go find it and unplug it. Just straight up. Just unplug it. And if there's any research that you need to do, you realize you need to know something in order to keep writing, make a note of it in the text and go do it later. I think that, I find that sometimes I can trust myself and I'm really going to get to it. If I get into a habit where I can't trust myself, I need to treat myself like a baby. I need to fence myself in so I have no choice but to actually write the stupid thing. Because I really don't want to. And a lot of the time, I really don't want to, and I do it anyway. So a lot of what you have to do is just find ways to force yourself to do it, I guess, by limiting your other options.
I don't know if you have an answer to this, but just in case you do, Lady Dominic is asking, do you have any tips for avoiding going back over during a draft to perfect scenes for neurodivergent folks who struggle to write out of order and get the I need to have it exactly right or else I cannot move on feel?
I have two answers for that. I really like when you do that. The first answer is Kurt Vonnegut, who's also who was a creative writing professor along with being a novelist. One of his theories about writers is that there are two versions. There are swoopers and there are bashers. What I've described to you just now is what a swooper does. A swooper like kind of swoops through a scene, sprints through it, writes the whole thing, then swoops again and redoes it and so on, right? He said that a basher works really, really hard on one page until they're certain that it's perfect, and then they move on. I find it's a lot harder to teach bashing because it requires a kind of structured mind that I can't really comprehend. My mind's kind of all over the place. So answer one might be, you might be a basher, right? It might be that you really do need to focus on those individual moments in order to do it. My second answer, though, is that I also have that super perfectionist drive. And honestly, the only way that I can get through it is to lean as far in the opposite direction as I possibly can. Sometimes I really revel in being irresponsible. That I'll write a scene, I'll be like, I don't know what happens here. Future Kevin has to solve that, and it's have fun with it, make fun of yourself, and recognize that your perfectionism is part of the problem, I guess. And so whatever you can do to get past it for the drafting stage will be really useful, even if it's not perfect. I say all this like it's very easy, but earlier today I was beating myself up while I was drafting. It always happens. So do your best. That's really all you can do.
The other Sophie says, what if you don't live alone? Which you don't.
I don't.
So.
I wait until you leave, or
now I don't leave.
No, for real. I mean, one thing that I'd meant to say earlier about taking care of yourself is that since we've all been quarantined, this has been the hardest era in my life to write. Period.
Mm-hmm.
I said 1,000 words a day, but lately it's been I can crank out 1,000 every once in a while, but it's 500 in a day if I'm lucky, and a lot of days it's barely anything at all. Which is very weird for me. It's very, very strange when you compare that to the past 10 years of my life. So if you don't live alone, try to find other ways to limit your distractions. Sometimes what I will do is I will literally go into the settings of my computer and turn off Wi-Fi, because it takes a couple more steps to turn the Wi-Fi on, and in that time I can sometimes catch myself and say, Vibert, what are you doing? Stop it. Or even if I'm listening to music on YouTube, I will make the window really, really small and hide it in a corner of the screen, so that in order to go to the internet, I need to find the exact pixel that I can grab it and move it out. Anything to make the distractions harder to go to, I think is really useful.
Let's just take a couple more, maybe.
Yeah.
How do you figure out the chronological order for scenes in a non-chronological story, i.e. monstrous reflection?
It's a good question.
Well, did you use index cards for that one?
I did use index cards for that one.
And just write down the story piece by piece and then push it around.
Mm-hmm.
I think Soul of the People maybe also.
Yes. I'll make an outline for what actually happened, and then after the outline of the literal events that occurred, I will try to break it up and try to figure out what order of events I want to put it in. Is there anything else that you wanted to say on that?
Well, I think then the answer, finding the right answer, has to do with tension and mystery.
One of my absolute favorite ways to look at stories, movies, etc., that really play around with when things happen is trying to fit them onto that tension chart that I showed you. One of my favorite examples of that actually is Star Wars Episode 5. Which one's that? What's the title? It's the one. It's everyone's favorite. Empire Strikes Back. Empire Strikes Back follows 2 or 3 different groups of characters throughout it, and it does this amazing thing.
Oh yeah.
Where as it moves along, as soon as a group of characters is about to get to a dull moment, it switches to somebody else. Yeah. It's just a constant bait and switch.
So the tension goes like this, mm-hmm. even though for each particular group of characters, it might be doing that.
It tells multiple stories on the same charts. Yeah. The reader experience is still that rise and fall of tension.
Yeah, that's good.
For drafting, just write all the scenes. You can reorder them later. But in general, it's what I think about when I'm rearranging them.
Apple Pie wants to know, how do you actually figure out how to fill in the bracketed parts, like the parts where you say, I don't know what goes here. Parts that you left for later.
Sometimes, here's one way that I think about drafting and revising, and kind of going back to the Cormac McCarthy example that we were talking about a little while ago, right? Remember that example was that Cormac McCarthy's first drafts don't look like his highly stylized final drafts that he's famous for. And one of the big things that I think that we can take from that is that not even Cormac McCarthy is Cormac McCarthy. Many Cormac McCarthys working together over many days can eventually achieve what we know as Cormac McCarthy.
That's terrifying.
Right? When you put in that bracket, essentially I think what you're saying is that today I cannot answer this. I don't know. I'm hoping that I will tomorrow, or I'm hoping that I will the next day. So it sort of depends on what tomorrow or the next day is going to bring. A lot of the time you'll find that you stumble upon the answer on another day and it feels fair. What was impossible one day is effortless another day. Sometimes it's a matter of you really can't think of anything, you throw in a placeholder line, and honestly nobody notices because you're the only one that cares. And that's okay, right? The real purpose of the bracketed sections is so that while you're drafting it, you can just keep moving. And later on, even if what you replace it with isn't very good, at least you got it down and you got to later parts of the story that are a lot better.
I'm going to take one more. I have something to say, and I'm also curious about what you have to say. It's from Al the NB Nerd. How to get confidence in your writing. I'm just beginning, and it feels like bad writing even when edited.
You said you had something to say?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think that, I mean, it isn't as, you aren't as good now as you will be later.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, I don't even know that you do need to ever be at a point where you're like, my writing is good.
Yeah, I'm not.
You know, occasionally you are.
Oh yeah, I have a hot day every once in a while.
Yeah, you have your up days. And you probably have them more than you used to, and you certainly get like a lot more affirmation than you used to.
That's
and
true.
I think that helps.
Mm-hmm.
But like, obviously you want to be able to at least have enough confidence to like write stuff down and, you know, show it to other people if you need help and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's fine if you don't think it's good, even
Mm-hmm.
when it's done. Well, that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just, it doesn't need to be. I don't know. Like, just keep going, and what you really want is to get better over time, be better than you used to be, and that's really all you can ask for. And like, even if you're looking at it and you're like, no, it's not great, it's fine. Mm-hmm. Make it as good as it can be as good as you can be. It really doesn't matter.
And I would say, just for morale, get really excited about the things that you are doing well. I think that, you know, very early, I mean, even in the first version of our first episode, I have a lot of issues with that version of the episode that we're not going to go into. But while writing it, I remember that one of the things I was most excited about was the structure and the way that the twist comes out, and the fact that there is kind of one case sitting on top of another case. And I felt that we were very, very smart for doing that. And so all the other problems didn't register to me as much because I was able to like really hyper focus on, this is a cool thing that we're doing.
It was fun.
It was really fun.
It was fun.
So you're always going to have something that's wrong with everything that you write. That never goes away. And the act of writing can be fun a lot of the time. And a lot of days when you sit down to do it, it is actively painful. It is bad and terrible. But if you push through that, and if you try to focus on, these are the things that I did really well today, and get yourself excited about it, you can keep the fun in it, and you can keep yourself doing it, right? I think that's a nice
place to end, I think.
Mm-hmm. So it's time to write your stories.
Yay!
Write your drafts, excuse me. Remember, we don't worry if it's good.
It can be garbage. Garbage is fine. We love garbage. Send us garbage.
Send us garbage.
Send us garbage.
We wrote some garbage stories earlier that were a lot of fun.
Yes.
Yes.
Have a nice time.
Only wrong answers not to do it. Okay?
Have a nice time.
Mm-hmm.
And we look forward to seeing what you write.
Can't wait.
We'll pick something to read at the beginning of next week.
Mm-hmm.
check out the link we put in the description. See what you can do about supporting the USPS.
Mm-hmm.
Love to have a mail service.
Love to have a mail service.
Love it. And I think that's about it.
Yeah.
Throw me in the trash. That's what we're doing this week.
I'm starting to think that you have like
Put me in the trash.
I'm starting to think that you maybe have like an unhealthy attachment.
Where I belong.
You're an adult. You could go in the trash.
I'll have a nice time.
You can go in the trash.
I'll have a nice time in the trash. Put me in the trash, okay? There's like hair on me. That's the job for this week. And we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Good luck.